Okay, we're good.
Awesome. So it did turn out, because it did turn out I was leading the discussion this week. But I can't actually start live things because I only have the app, but I don't have a computer. So we got all that worked out. So we are ready to go. Sister Meeker of Who We All Are, can we just all take turns saying our names one more time? I'll start. I'm Maeve.
I'm Katie.
Melody.
Erica.
All right, great. Do we want to start with a prayer like we did last week?
Yeah.
Would anyone like to say the prayer?
I will.
Okay.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this day and grateful for this opportunity that we have to meet together as classmates and to learn from one another. Please bless us in our discussion that we may articulate our opinions and we ask you to bless us all as we work on our paper this week that we may and that we need, and we ask you to please bless us all with safety, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Katie. All right, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. So the first, I don't know about you guys, but these videos were extremely interesting to watch. And the first one about that was against same-sex marriage in Iowa, it wants us specifically to look at the effective, just sort of how he did his speech and to apply the effective and persuasive techniques that we're learning this week. So what principles of effective speaking did you see in his speech? What were some examples?
I feel like if he were giving that speech as like a sermon in a church, probably a Bible thumping Baptist, church, then it probably would have been effective because he used the scriptures really well to prove his point.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think, was it.
Does anyone else have any opinions about that?
I was watching that, and it made me cringe, but in a way that was like, I know where you're coming from. Like, I know what you're trying to say. I even agree with you on some things. But I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the people in the background. Like that lady that was sitting down, her face was like, no, I am not having this. And you could just tell that the interaction. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I thought I went out.
Yes.
Okay. And so, yeah, in terms of how effective he was, I think he was very spirited and riveted, and I agree. Although I recognize the importance of religion in Scripture, it wasn't evidence, and it wasn't. And I hate to say that because I know where he's coming from, but I was just cringing watching it because I was like, no one's going to respect him. I don't think anybody's going to take what he's saying as, why should we listen to you? So I felt bad for him.
I like that you just said, why should we listen? Because I think that's like a big point. And that's kind of the problem we're going to face. Like, that's why they said not to use scriptures a lot, I think, this week when they were talking about how we should write our papers. It was because, why, like, you've got to defend it in another way as well. So this kind of leads into the next question. What was the basis or the premise for his stance?
His was a religious stance. He based it on scriptural text and how he felt religion-wise. And I think when you're writing a paper, a persuasive paper like that, you have to take a neutral stance and have a neutral opinion to try to persuade those to come join the dark side or the light side or whichever side you're trying to accomplish. You know, it's I would love to read scriptures and quote the prophets all day long because that's how I know and that's how passionate I am about these things. But at the same time, you're trying to convince somebody who is not of a religious background and has no idea what in the world they're talking about, you're not going to get through to them at all.
Mhm. Yeah. Something that I also.
Uh-oh, we lost Amber.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if she was gonna.
Melody, if you can just try and reconnect her.
I will try to get her back on.
In the meantime, did anyone else have like a comment about that particular point?
Did you just ask a question? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
I did. Is mine cutting out too?
I think it's all kind of choppy today.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
does seem really choppy.
Yeah, it is a little choppy. That's gonna be really bad if it cuts out. But does anyone else have like another comment as far as like what the basis or the premise for his stance was? Because I mean, I think Melody said a lot and pretty much covered it, but does anyone else have any like feelings or comments about maybe how he could have done it better?
Nope.
Something real quick that I thought of when I was watching him was when we watched the Sister Barlow's presentation for the discussion board.
Mhm.
Something that she said, if I remember correctly, was we should not approach any topic, regardless of the side that we're on, in anger or in with cynicism or I think she said something like that because it pushes people away. And I feel
Mhm.
like I felt, even though I'm a religious person too, I do feel like he was angry, which I can understand why, I guess, but I feel like it was a lot of fear mongering, like God will punish you kind of thing. And that definitely pushes away. Whether or not he believes it's true or there are obviously consequences to sin. Yes, Sodom and Gomorrah happened, and and he referenced that, but that's not, I don't think, to me, that wouldn't be something that, I don't know, that would make me be like, instead of, oh, he's right. You know what I mean? I don't know. So that was something that I thought of, like that connection that Sister Barlow said, not to push people away in anger.
Mhm. Yeah. Which that kind of leads into the next question. If you were on the fence, because obviously we all are on the same side, but if you were on the fence when it comes to same-sex marriage, how would you feel after listening to that speech? And I think, Erica, you kind of said that maybe you'd be a little like put off, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Put off by how he was and the way he approached it, because it gives a religious people a bad look, and obviously he doesn't represent all of us, but somebody might, that if that's their only what's the word I'm looking for, like introduction, I guess, to religion and what the gospel has to say about it, I think that could put someone off to see that side.
Mm-hmm.
I think too that we naturally kind of lean toward the side that inspires us and makes us feel good. And even though we're all religious, I kind of think that most of us at least could agree that after watching that, we didn't feel uplifted or good, And so I think another thing that in our instructions for our essays and stuff this week, we're not supposed to use like a religion because that
Mm-hmm.
turns off a lot of people. Because even with other religious people, they don't believe the same way as we do. And so I think that it's really important that we still use the Spirit in what we do, but we don't just use the Bible or the Book of Mormon or whatever to bring across our point. We're still religious people, so the Spirit is going to come across, but we have to do it in a way that other people will accept it and feel inspired and happy when they leave.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. I think there was just like this tenseness to his, it was like very contentious, let's put it that way. That probably makes the most sense. Like the way that he phrased everything was just so contentious that it made me feel uncomfortable, like watching the video. Like I physically felt uncomfortable watching it, and I actually like scrolled to look and see when it was over, because I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. And that's definitely when we're trying to convince someone to come to our side and to persuade them, that's not how we want them to feel.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I
Does
felt
anyone
like it
else?
was very aggressive, and like especially the part where he was like talking about how homosexuality is like punishable by death or whatever, in God's eyes. And I just felt like there was no compassion, and it wasn't the right place for that kind of rhetoric, I guess.
Mhm.
So me looking at it at a perspective where I have absolutely no idea what same-sex marriage is, and I have no opinion on the matter. Just watching this, I personally would feel sorry for those who were homosexual, and I would want to go and cheer them on because of feeling this anger and hate and like you said, maybe the contention that was in it. I would probably honestly feel the opposite and just be like, yeah, you know what? I think I want to go support these people because there is this type of person out there going, no, 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 shaking his head and being all negative about it. When, we know what we're supposed to do. But if I looked at it from a perspective where I had no opinion, no knowledge on the subject, and nothing, I probably would be the opposite. It probably would have pushed me away.
I think all that leads sort of into the last question for this particular video is what was less effective about his speech. So I think we've all agreed that just the manner in which that he went after it was just not appropriate.
Definitely.
Does anyone have anything else they want me to write down?
It just wasn't Christ-like, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, not obviously Christ in the scriptures, it talks about, what is it, like correcting, but then following up with love, and I feel like there was no love in that. So.
Yeah, and he also didn't make himself relatable to the audience at all. Like, he didn't make himself personable to them. He didn't share anything about himself or anything, which I think if he had done something like that would have made it more effective.
Yeah, like the whole thing we learned about like story of self, story of us, I don't know, those 3 different things. He didn't do any of that at all.
Right.
Yeah, story of self, story of us, and then action. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
Engagement.
All right. So now I'm going to be interested to hear some of the, I don't know about you, but I was like super torn up like watching the next video, because obviously like they're arguing for same-sex marriage. I felt that the next guy was very persuasive. He did an excellent job of following the whole format. So what he used that you guys liked?
Well, he used the stories really well, right? He told us the story of him, and then he related it to us, and like he gave an action. So I think that was a huge part of why it was so persuasive. He did that very well.
Yeah, and he didn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go for it.
I was just say he didn't come off aggressive. He just came off as like, this is me. This is my experience. Like, I'm a human being. Like that's the vibe I got from him, and I thought that was really. I thought that really helped his cause a lot, and I felt like yeah, you're just another person. Look how good you turned out. regardless. So, you know, just going off of his one thing, like, you know, he made me like him, I guess.
He was a likable character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think when you have a persuasive piece like that, it's you know, the stories, the relatability, him trying to wrap you up in a blanket and make you feel good kind of thing without pushing on you, I think is what makes you feel comfortable about the situation. And when, you know, relating it back to when we're doing our pieces and stuff, being able to wrap that blanket around, make them feel comfortable without being pressured, without putting that pressure on them. I think that was the biggest piece that I saw in there.
Awesome. All right, so
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Erica.
I was going to say something that I think he did really well. Define the family in a way that was universal, and so to speak, that everybody could relate to that. And I think everybody relates to the idea of, like he said, we're just like everybody else. You know, we eat dinner and we do this, and my mom got sick, and you know what I mean? And he, again, it's that connection. And of course, we may understand the ideal family. We've talked about that in this class. But I would say the average person on the street would probably connect with that. Like, oh yeah, I have somebody in my family that's been sick too. Or we eat dinner, or whatever he said, I don't remember. But he defined the family in such a way that everybody could relate to. And I think that is, it's kind of, again, like Sister Barlow said, the framing, you know, what people use, whether or not it's right or wrong or whatever, sometimes the framing and the words we use are enough to make people feel like he has authority in what he's saying. He also mentioned that he's a student and he's getting an education, and sometimes that can make people feel like, oh, so he's smart, you know what I mean? So there was little things that he put in there that I felt all added to why you should listen to me and my story. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I thought that was done really well for what he was saying.
Great. So what was his stance? What was the basis or premise for his stance? Would you guys say that it was just that general definition of family?
I don't know. I feel like his foundation, it would just be he lived that life. It was him, you know? And so if he didn't have that personal experience, I'm not sure he'd be there given that speech that he did. And so I think it just hit home for him.
I also kind of felt like it was, you know, would you deny after hearing about me and about my family, deny rights to me, you know, like he brought up making them a second-class citizen and stuff. Would you really, I felt like, you know, he was saying, would you really do that to me and to others like me?
So he's kind of putting it in their face, just like showing them, giving them, like putting a face to an idea.
Yeah.
Because I feel like going along with that, his stance was, well, will this vote really affect anyone? Because look, I was raised by 2 females and I came out great, and even said to the judge, I think you'd be proud of me as your son, you know, which I thought was really good. So I think the stance was like, look, I'm okay. I came out fine. Does gay marriage really affect anybody? And people say it's going to affect kids. I came out okay. So does this vote really affect the family? No. I think that I got out of it as his stance.
Sorry, as I frantically scribble away on my piece of paper. Anyone else have any comments, or is that pretty much what sums it up for everybody?
I agree with all of you. I can't add any more.
Okay. All right, so if you were on the fence when it comes to same-sex marriage, how would you feel after listening to his speech? I've already said I felt that he was very persuasive. I think honestly that if I had been on the fence and I didn't know what I know about gospel like doctrine and things, that I probably would have been swayed.
Especially if, oh, sorry. Especially if you were in that situation, listening to the first kid and then this guy. I would like, not knowing what I know, just going there for my information and to decide in that moment. Like, the second kid would have probably, influenced me in his direction.
Mm-hmm.
It almost makes you feel a little sorry for your convictions a little bit. Like, maybe I should have more compassion for this situation. Maybe I should think about it in a different perspective. And that's kind of how he made me feel a little bit. Like, maybe I should give this a chance. And then I sat back and I was like, whoa, wait a second. If basing it just going back to, if I had no opinion on it, I probably would be like, yeah, they should definitely have a chance. They should definitely have families. They should definitely be able to have the same rights and blah, 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 blah. But again, you have to remember you have to remember where you are at the specific time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I was not on the fence, or excuse me, if I was on the fence and I didn't have any education, didn't have any, I don't want a moral compass because that implies that those who support it don't have a moral compass. That's not true, but anything to kind of give me as a guide of why I should feel the way I do. I agree. I think that he would be very compelling, very persuasive. I definitely see where he's coming from after listening to his video. And I think that, I don't want to say side because I don't feel like it's always like that, but people who full on support without any, anyways, I think a lot of time it's the emotional side. They pull the emotional side. And that makes sense. The only thing I have to say about it, though, as an educated person and still on the fence, I feel like I'd be like, that's a great story. I get it. I connect to you. I see where you're coming from. Your feelings and your story is valid. But where's the evidence? Because I still feel like, although as persuasive as he was, I don't feel like there was actually any evidence in there still. That was just his experience.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else could have an experience where they did not intend to be nice by, I've read articles of people that don't. So just hearing that story, yes, I think it was very persuasive, and it definitely made me feel like, okay, there's more to this than just, these aren't bad people. You know what I mean? That support, or just because somebody's gay doesn't mean they're a bad person. I've never thought that, but that story really helped me show more compassion, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I am also like, okay, but his story is just his story too. Does that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know.
Amber, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or?
Oh, I just simply said I would be like on his side.
Okay, because I think that Erica leads into that last question about, well, what would make his speech more effective? Like, what was less effective about his speech? And Erica's right. There were no, in either of the speeches, there was no evidence that was like sociologically powerful. There was no like support for the statements that they were making, other than stories or Bible verses, and those don't hold up when we're trying to prove something sociologically and getting people to get the point across.
Right. I feel like he actually did mention how there are studies and stuff that support the opposite view that he was saying. This last guy that was like pro, but he didn't give any stats or anything else. He just used himself as that kind.
Anybody else? Or are we ready to move on to the article?
That would have made it more effective.
Yeah, what was less effective about that one guy's speech? Because I know you already said about the
Mhm.
where's the evidence?
Right. I just think the evidence.
Okay. Well, if that's all, then I will go ahead and move on to the article. So we're supposed to take our time piece by piece and go through those same questions. So what were some effective principles that he used in his article?
Stop. Go upstairs and tell.
He allowed himself to for people to disagree. Like he would say stuff all the time like that, I don't know, that made you okay. That made you still feel like a good person if you disagreed with what he was saying. And he just kept saying this is me type of thing, and it was just read. Like it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is so boring. It was if I had to read with it, it would have been an easy read. I like those things.
I think I've read a lot of Matt Walsh articles and I really like him. I like everything that I read, and I think one of the things that makes him so good at what he does is he's in his writing. Like when you're reading that, I guess he just kind of intellectual side of things for me. I
To the
really
what?
like that the intellectual side. Sorry.
Thank you.
Things, at least for me, and I like that he it's not about two people loving each other or having a family together. I think it was very well written.
Yeah, he kind of brought up this idea of something called equality versus equity. And I liked that he pointed out that there simply is no equal. And he pointed out biologically, why there's no equal to what we traditionally define as marriage. And he pointed out, yes, okay, love is a factor, but that still isn't going to make these other unions the same ever. They're still going to have an unusual, replicatable, that's not the right word probably, but they're not going to be able to have the same effect that a marriage between a man and a woman is. And that was probably the one that stood out to me the most. So I agree with you, Katie. He did do a really good job of intellectually laying out the definition of marriage and making it in a way that people couldn't be like, oh, that's not true or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Something that I appreciate. Okay. Okay. So, because I personally am not the biggest Matt Walsh fan, and I know that's oh, you're Mormon and what, but I don't like. I feel like there's a cynicism and a sarcasm and an attitude. However, I do appreciate. I wrote down that he made it clear, and I think he made it clear for people who maybe had not thought of this before, that same-sex marriage and this whole topic and argument is redesigning the original purpose of marriage. And the idea that marriage is just for two people that love each other, that's a relatively new idea. It's been about, for the history of the world, it's been to bring about family and structure and economy and all these things. And maybe he didn't touch on all those little specific things, but I do appreciate that he did give the logic. And he said, look, marriage, especially between a man and a woman, like you said, Maeve, is that there's so much more that can be brought into that. that unfortunately no other type of union will ever be able to replicate. You can have the love and you can have all that, but you simply it's not going to be equal. So I appreciated that, and I appreciated that he explained it in a way that I feel anybody reading it could understand. It was logical. It was valid, I feel.
You know, when I was reading it and I was thinking about how the equality, like between the equality of men and women, and how it related to the same thing, how there's so many people that want us to be equal, men and women, and same-sex marriage, and you know, all these concepts. We all want equality in different ways, but we're all different. And that's the biggest thing in this whole thing is it's not the same. It's not ever going to be the same. No matter how much we fight for it or how much they want to fight for it, it's not going to be the same as a traditional marriage. And I think that was the point. One of the points that he was trying to come across was, it's not, you may want equality, you want to be equal, but it's not the same.
So what would you say is the basis or the premise for his stance? Would you say, Melody, that sort of that idea that regardless of how much we want equality, that it's not going to ever really work? Would you say that that's sort of the basis of what he was talking about?
That's what I felt like.
Does anyone else have any comments about that?
So.
I think that, along with defining the family.
Mm-hmm.
Did we lose Amber again? Oh, there she is.
Sorry. I had to change over to my phone and then someone called me, so.
It's okay.
I just wrote down for that question that I kind of said just what he said, that a marriage between a man and a woman is the only union that can create human life. I felt like that was the basis of his article.
Perfect. So if you personally were on the fence and you were sent to this article, where do you think it would push you?
Traditional marriage.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. Honestly, like I liked the article, but it didn't give me too much. So I'd probably still be on the fence, but I'd probably be leaning a little bit more towards traditional marriage.
I hate to play devil's advocate, but maybe it's my bias towards how he writes. I don't care for his tone, and so I need to try and remove that. I think I would understand his arguments. I agree with him. I would definitely understand where he's coming from and consider his logic valid. But I would also, the question comes to mind, yeah, but what if people don't care about having a family? Or what if people, it's just about love? You know, I can imagine what people would say in response to him. I don't agree with that. That's not what I'm feeling. But I feel like if I was somebody on the fence, that might be a question I would raise to him. Yeah, and some people don't want families, you know, so that's not what I think, but that might be a question I would have if I was on the fence.
Yeah. What about you, Katie? What do you think?
Well, I just think his thing, family in a way, but mostly his article was about marriage. You know, it didn't really, like, I thought about, while I was reading that, I thought about the kid in the video for same-sex marriage. And one of the things that I thought was that you could come back to him and say, well, obviously your parents, your moms, weren't married most of your growing up. So they were still able to raise you well without being married. Matt Walsh's article really just focused on the marriage and kind of the legal the legal policies about marriage. Didn't really have a lot to do with family, and so you could come at it from looking or from a family view, you know. He was just talking about marriage and why the marriage between just a man and a woman, and I think that he did a good job at proving that point, you know. It's not about love. It's more than that. And so, but like you said, Erica, like he is really sarcastic, which, you know, I guess
Teach,
I am around a lot of sarcastic people.
and I'm not. So
Yeah.
My husband's
So
very sarcastic, and so I kind of like, I just relate to that. But I
So-
think, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, we're supposed to do this in about 40 minutes, and I just don't want this to drag on too long because I know I actually have to get somewhere, and I know Amber usually does this on like a lunch break or something, but she seems to have dropped out of the call again.
And my kids
But
are starting to get rowdy, so.
Wrap this up. We've only got one more question and then the summary. So if we can just get through those two real quick. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. I think honestly that the reason that I was put off by his I'd still be on the fence, honestly, but I'd probably actually be pushed a little bit away because there is a place for sarcasm in persuasive articles. I just don't think that that's an appropriate way to get across your point. Like, to laugh, we use sarcasm. We make fun of ourselves, but we don't use sarcasm in the way that he did. Like at one point he said, "Oh, I'm not going to use any of those facts. I'm not going to use any of the sociological stuff." And he was kind of like snarky about it. And I did not appreciate that in any way, shape, or form. And then I was a little frustrated because some of the other snark that he put in was actually the article I'm thinking of, that he talked a little bit about how the judicial system worked. My dad's a lawyer. My dad is certified to argue in front of the Supreme Court, and I know how it works. And the fact that he attacking the way the judicial system works, and the fact that he obviously didn't fully understand why it was set up that way, kind of put me off as well. So I liked his definition of marriage, but pretty much didn't like the rest of the article. And so that was kind of off-putting for me. But was there anything else that any of you found sort of off-putting about his article that was like less effective for you?
I guess really quick, the only thing I'll also add is when he was addressing, you know, I know I'm going to get comments about this, and the people that oppose me are these types of people. I feel like, just like I wouldn't want someone to group me and assume something of me because of my position, I wouldn't want that either. And I feel like those people that maybe he would try to get to read his article, if I was the person on the other side, I'd be like, I don't want to listen to you. You're insulting me in your first, you know what I mean? So, but that just adds to you. And that's all.
Can you please take him upstairs?
Okay. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to add? Nope. All right. So just a quick summary. I'll just go through this as fast as I can. We felt that the first speech, he was good at using something to defend his point, but it really wasn't in the right place. He was using it out of should have been used in, and his basis was fully religious, and that kind of pushed us away from his view because it wasn't personable enough. It didn't follow that flow that we needed to attach to him and to really believe his cause. And so we Christ, and he wasn't relatable, and he sort of that persuasive format that was why his speech was not very effective. Whereas with the second same-sex marriage, we like to use those stories. He made us feel good. He made us feel attached to the story, and then he related it to us, and he made us stop and pause and think, oh my goodness, why do I feel this way? That his basis was all about that, look, this is me. I'm a normal person. Like, are you going to reject me to my face? And that while he was while he was very persuasive and he pushed us a little bit to reconsider how we were feeling, and he was very compelling. But that we didn't like that there wasn't sociological proof, and so we couldn't be completely swayed on that. Finally, with Matt Walsh, we liked that he allowed others to disagree with him. We liked the way that he defined marriage, and that he made it clear what the purpose of marriage was. We liked that there was this idea that it wasn't just about marriage, it was about, well, this is an equality we're striving for that just isn't achievable. Like, just look at this in a broader spectrum. Like, don't look at it as we're focusing on like homosexuals, but look at it as we're trying to strive for equality and how that's not going to work. We were kind of mixed on whether we felt persuaded by him or not. It was pretty much, it was not, there was, no one was like, it didn't seem like anyone was particularly like strongly swayed one way or another. And then we just felt like his writing style didn't make us feel very comfortable, and it didn't invite others to really consider his stance. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add before we just go ahead and close out?
Nope, that sounds great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, very good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being so patient and for doing all of that. I will get that up as soon as possible tonight. If you feel like I leave anything out in the post that I put up online, go ahead and feel free to add something in the comments. So much. I'll talk to you guys next week. Good luck on those papers.
Bye.
Thanks. Have a good week.
Thank you.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.